Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Gaago analysis show. Again, as you can see, I'm delighted to be joined by Séamus Hickey in his evergreen. As Bubbles always refers to him, the man that must have every shade of green possible.
Listen, I'm committed to the cause. Hey Noel, week 7, the shows I'm running out of things to wear if I'm wearing the same thing again, but sure, there you go.
You're wearing your pajamas underneath it, so. Obviously, we have two very interesting games this weekend. We have obviously Laois are playing against Wexford up in Laois. We have obviously Offaly then as well are playing Cork up in Offaly. That's a double header. I suppose last weekend we saw history made in Limerick, 6 in a row, which is fantastic for all of those people that are involved with Limerick GA. And then we saw Kilkenny make it 5 in a row. And what is it, the 76th Leinster title they've won?
Yeah.
Since they started poking the ball around the field. So some interesting stats there, but should be a couple of good games this weekend also.
Yeah, listen, the provincial finals, I thought Leinster promised a bit more than it did. And we'll talk about it. I know we'll say even what we expected from Dublin, what Dublin did. But the Munster final, it was a good bit closer than you actually think. The margins were closer than the final results would suggest. Now Limerick, they were far more clinical, and we'll kind of look at that. But from a Limerick person, I was there, and it was great buzz. The fact that it was 6 in a row, you wouldn't know it. People hanging around afterwards, and people enjoying the moment. Like, because I think Limerick people, we know that we have to enjoy these days while they last. The absence of them for so long would kind of make you appreciate what we have. So it was the Clare will be disappointed. The famine goes on for them, but from a Limerick perspective, I'm not that bothered. So.
Yeah, and do you know what? Obviously, we won't discuss about the power cut and that, but do you know what? The very essence of like the GA is about being surrounded by GA people. And at times you kind of take for granted where, you walk into a stadium and you could sit beside someone from the opposition and have a conversation, maybe share a sandwich and a cup of tea, whereas there's a lot of other sports that don't have that luxury. So it's definitely something that, despite the fact it was 30 minutes delay and it was probably hard on some people and players and people, young kids, the reality is to see what we're all about.
No, listen, the provincial finals are still great events. And Thurles full is a great spectacle. It really is, because the goal that Clare got before half time, the roar and the lift going into the tunnel at half time, that was big for them. But for me, it's cool to be part of those days, to be able to witness those days. But my kids do not know a day when Limerick didn't win things. So. That's the era.
They're not complaining about that, Séamus.
They haven't a clue. This is how it's always been. But sure, that's just the era we're living in.
Yeah, and do you know what? We might even talk about that point because I actually think that's a really important point, and it's kind of plays into some of our clips. But the goal before half time, you'd wonder did that play into the psyche too much of Clare, and it's not something we probably discussed beforehand. But the goal before half time definitely put Clare in the driving seat in terms of momentum, because they were back in the game. But when they came back out, and we won't discuss it now because I think it'll kind of kill some of our points.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that we will chat about, because even just before we started, I was only thinking about this myself, but did that change the dynamic of how Clare came out in the second half, because they were slightly flat. We won't talk about that. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to run at that. You're going to talk about how Limerick got the better of Clare. I'll then run with some pieces on, we'll say Clare trying to bunch and move to the right-hand side of the play, which was really useful in the first half. Wind affected in the second half. I'll then move on to Dublin's lack of maybe press or structure for sharp buckets from Kilkenny, and then you'll finish off on some nice attack and play from Offaly. So if you want to run with that structure, we'll let you start off with the impressive Limerick stuff.
Yeah. So, and what I'm talking about here is. What I'm talking about here is when I thought the game was quite even in the first half, and I thought if you look at the puck out stats, Clare did well getting the ball up the field for a mass majority of the time. Like you said, they actually made good use of long delivery. But the margins which you lose, and when people say that Clare just looked a bit off, I wanted to kind of look at that and say, so what is it when a team is just a little bit off? And so I took a couple of look clips here. So the first one that I have queued up is basically, so this puck out, so Cleary gets the ball and he goes long, right? So this is good, all right? So Shane O'Donnell's under the ball, but Dan Morrissey makes a decision to leave his man to come and win it. That's great. So Kyle Hayes comes out with the ball and he pings it to Barry Nash. Darragh Lohan has the tackle here, right? And in the helter-skelter, intense first 10 minutes of a Munster Championship game, I'm expecting Barry Nash nailed there and levelled. And because Darragh Lohan misses, Mark Rogers misses. And then you've got Diarmuid Burns, who was a guy who needed confidence at the beginning of the game. This is early in the game. He tips over a score, and that helps him in his ding-dong with Peter Duggan during the day. And even here, so like we have a bad line ball from Diarmuid Burns, right? So Conlon stands to hit, which I'd expect him 10 out of 10 times to score. So he goes short. But then when Limerick work the ball out, so here we've got Barry Nash, he stalls a little bit. McCarthy's in, Rogers in. They really need to get the ball out there. But just look at the ball to hand from Hannon, right? So Limerick, when they work the ball through the hands, compare it to any of the clips that we're going to see of Clare working the ball through the hand. Hayes has momentum on his side. He's got the angle before he has the ball in his hand. Dave Fitzgerald hasn't a chance of stopping him. And Kyle Hayes is making this look routine at this stage. But that doesn't work without the crisp ball to hand that Limerick are able to do and the missed tackles on Barry Nash earlier. So they got the ball down here to Shane O'Brien. Limerick get the ball down, and then Clare do really well, right? So we've got 8 bodies back here behind their own 65. So essentially they're both midfielders, and 2 out of the 3 half forwards are back here. And Colin O'Neill has to scramble even just to kind of maintain possession and get it back to, you Kyle Hayes and Declan Hannon's support here. But with that number of players there, they have to get a press and accurate tackles. So their tackles weren't hitting. And when Will O'Donoghue moves in, even if Cathal Malone didn't foul him there, okay, and he gets a free, and frees were hard to come by for Limerick, but he got a free there. Even if they didn't get him there, he had a channel to run into. So here we have Adam Hogan taking a short puck out, and he's looking for Peter Duggan, because Peter Duggan was having a rich kind of couple of minutes here against Diarmuid Burns. But Diarmuid Burns reads it, attacks it, so Adam Hogan probably hit it too far back the field. But look at how Limerick counter, right? So they're going to use the space between the 265s. Gearóid Hegarty comes out, and just a fabulous pass into Shane O'Brien, and he's really proven his mettle in the last 2 games. 19-year-old from Kilmallock. I know his father. I was in his S&C classes for a couple of years, dying a death out in Kilmallock. He was involved as S&C with Clare for a good number of years. Adrian O'Brien. So, but when Limerick use the ball, they use it really well. Here we have Clare again. They had numbers in the middle of the field. They press. They've got good numbers. Players back defending. So we got the arrows here just indicate we've got good tracking back here from David Fitzgerald, from Peter Duggan, from Darragh Lohan. Barry Nash mishits it, so he's under pressure. That's good. When Quilligan wins it, right, he plays it out to Conlon. We're just going to take a look here now. Just compare this to how Limerick were using the ball a minute ago, right? We've got 3 Clare players in the middle of the field. That, to me, that's where the ball has to go. Like, there's no doubt to me. Like, but none of those players are demanding that ball. They're turned away from Conlon when he gets the ball. And then when it goes down, Barry Nash cuts it out from Rogers. That's grand. And then Kyle Hayes is going to attack again. And we've got those 3 boys that were tracking back down the far side, doing the good work. When the ball is turned over again from poor use of ball, they're caught in no man's land, and they're leggy. So this is the first 5 minutes of the second half. And Tom Morrissey could have closed his eyes on Sunday and probably split the post. He was having that kind of a day. But that's the kind of thing when you're saying a team is a little bit off. What are they doing that's off? And here we have Quilligan. He looks up the field and he makes a decision. I don't think it's a great decision. And Declan Hannon 2-on-1 here. Diarmuid Burns and Barry Nash proper goal side for the ball. And then Kyle Hayes has time to deliver from that platform we were talking about last week. Now, you've been here, Noel.
Yes, plenty of times.
Yeah, I see the ball. I think I can make the interception here, so I'm going to leave my man and go. But forwards can gamble. Backs can't gamble. If you go, it has to be 100%. And when David McInerney goes, Hegarty gambles. And when you gamble as a back and lose, this is what happens, unfortunately. And then Cleary's fighting with Gillane. And then I thought Quilligan did well here. I thought he closed the angle as good as he possibly could. But it's just a super finish from Hegarty. So, like when that's what I'm trying to capture is when you say a team is just a little bit off. I could show those clips for Clare from even the Cork game. And we'd have had examples of them zipping that ball through the hands and using it well. It's just and flash back then to the first round against Limerick in the second half. Their decision making went from working the ball through the lines, getting the numbers right in the middle of the field, and getting good quality ball into the full forward line to fonging it long, losing platform and shape. Limerick using that space then to pick them apart. So unfortunately for Clare, they got the mix wrong. And you were saying before half time that goal to go in, it's actually the best and worst time to get it, isn't it?
100%. And I think that clip you showed, Séamus, really emulates what we're saying there. Like, you had 3 Clare players midfield that were static. They were standing. They weren't looking for the ball off Quilligan.
That's 5 minutes into the second half.
You know, and like, you'd wonder then as well, and this is something that I'm not a sports psych or anything like that, but is the psychology then a really important element for Clare? That the psychology is that they can't seem to wear down this Limerick team.
Yeah, well, like, so when you feel like a team, and I've come out at halftime in games, and I literally feel like I'm in sand, and every movement is difficult. And then instead of being proactive, and like we're going to look at Mark Rodgers in the first half in a few minutes on his attacking breaks and getting on breaks, but you go from being proactive to being reactive. And when you're reactive, you're planted and you're waiting for something to happen so that you can react. But then you're playing a team like Limerick, who were on the front foot. They were on the front foot. They were attacking. They were hitting. And to me, you know, you that split second of indecision is the kind of is the mental edge that's lost. And you can say, you know, you can blame management. You can say this, that, or the other. But this group of Clare players is on the road a long time. And you've got a lot of players playing a lot of games, and you know,
it's the third most final in a row like that.
They have to. If they don't believe they can do it, then it's going to show. They have to believe that they can win these games, and that belief then translates itself into the energy you bring. Because if you've doubt, for me, that's how it manifests. That kind of stuff.
I think that's why. Do you know what? Funnily, you change it then, and you look at Garrod Hegarty. I just read something there that he's getting better every year, and
not last year. But anyway,
well, like, since they take that year out, but since he's joined the panel and become a regular player, take last year out, he's after progressing every year. Like, that goal that he got there underneath Quilligan, like, we take it for granted, but that's a very, very difficult thing to do, because ground hurling isn't necessarily like a core staple of training. Do you know, it's not. It's like in the past year, maybe go back 10 years
and ago. It's even like the finishing, and you know. I've been part of training for finishing, right? I never actually got anything out of it because I can't finish. But it's always about the opportunity. So it's create more opportunities, trains the finishing.
Yeah.
And Hegarty is putting himself in opportunity after opportunity. Like against Clare in Cusack Park, there the last day. Put yourself
against Cork and Parky Queeve, he was the one that was making turnovers.
Create the opportunities, the finishing comes then. Like the finishing he created the opportunities for Séamus Flanagan below in Parky. So for me, it's one of those things where Limerick, like Cian Lynch, didn't feature. So we've got different guys who stand up at different times. Shane O'Brien now has done a good role since Séamus Flanagan has unfortunately got hurt. Peter Casey got hurt. So there is a next man up thing in Limerick that there's a depth of panel there that probably is a luxury.
And there's one fella that we haven't actually spoke about a whole lot, who I felt has been one of Limerick's best players over the last maybe 5 or 6 years. Who is it?
Dan Morrissey.
Huh?
I love Dan Morrissey. Dan Morrissey for me is...
no, but he's not playing. He's injured.
Dara Donovan?
yes.
Yeah, but he was...
we forget about him, like, because not that we forget about him, but, like, people don't think about him. We're talking now about, like, some of the injuries to other players, but not necessarily him. I think he's a massive player.
Yeah, but it's... Every Limerick player is a massive player because they all have all-stars, right? But because the team functions to such a high level without one or two personnel, it's how they survived the last couple of years. So like Cian Lynch was in a walking boot 2 All-Irelands ago. Declan Hannon didn't play last year. Will O'Donoghue went back centre back. So you know you've got a good team that can adapt to those kind of things. It's very, very hard to adapt to what Kilkenny had at the beginning of the Leinster round robin, which was like 4 or 5 key players go down against Central. Like that's actually hard to recover from and build momentum in, and they've actually used the Leinster final to do that. But I think you were looking in at how Clare attacked Limerick, and how they were actually they were onto something in the first half, and they were doing it well.
I think that they probably took a lot of positives from what Cork done to Limerick down in Cork, in the sense that what they were saying is, do you know what? Let's try the overload. because they know again that they're going to try and, stay in their zonal areas. So let's try it. So the first clip I looked at is the very first one that you looked at also, but I'm just going to go into it slightly bit more detail. It's when Quilligan goes short to Cleary. Cleary gets the ball and bombs it. And he's not bombing it because he knows where the ball is going to. Okay. We've highlighted here, we have, obviously Tony Kelly is probably one of the best players at reading the break, but getting onto the break at the right time, right? So even in this clip here, we can see Duggan is there. And I think this is actually key. It's not the runs. It's the two positions of O'Donnell and McCarthy. They're pushing the Limerick backs out of position. So when the ball comes, it allows then, if successful, that Duggan and Kelly are on the right side of where the ball is going to break. So you can see it here. Unfortunately, in that instance, it didn't work out. Yeah. But if it did work out, you can see the overload.
If that comes off, it's lethal, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a goal opportunity because you have Kelly and Duggan. This one actually works out. Okay, this time Duggan is up there. If we watch McCarthy on the top of the screen, we'll watch his move in a second. Rogers is coming from deep. Shane O'Donnell knows where the ball is going. Also, Duggan is exceptional at this. He can turn his body into the player and know exactly where the ball is going to be broken into. Okay, so breaking down, Rogers onto it, and that's McCarthy's run. So McCarthy knew that the ball was going to break on the outside, so he needed to be an option. The reality is, if you're going to beat Limerick, that needs to be a goal.
Yeah, and the finish needed to be there, but Mike Casey actually does very well to pressure him at the end. But anyway.
In the second half, and this is again into the psyche thing of we have Clare players that are static enough. Okay, in the first half, that wasn't happening. Peter Duggan does what he always does, goes up and tries to break the ball down. The only player here in this instance actually getting to the ball is Rogers. But because of Clare's static play, it doesn't drag any of the Limerick players out of position. So obviously that ball gets turned over. And they can't actually use that puck out as much anymore because the wind plays a huge factor. In the first half, that was going beyond the 45, and it's easier to read it. In the second half, with that breeze, it was only going to the far 65, and that has huge implications because there's far more bodies around it.
It's funny, right? And you'll love this, right? So from an academic perspective, right? The proportionality, the effect of the closeness to goal of that break is huge. So like it increases exponentially. The closer you get to goal, that ball is so dangerous. And you actually saw it in the Peter Duggan goal because that was a long free from Tony Kelly. Like Tony hit that from an area just outside his 21 with the breeze. And because it dropped in the square, now I would argue that 3 Limerick men went up for that ball, and that's a communication issue. But when it gets through to Nicky, then he's left, like, that's danger zone, alarm bells. But Duggan then was the first to react to it. So the further up the field that break happens, the more danger it is, the more space you have to run into from an attacking perspective, because the middle third, like between the two 65s, you've got half forwards, midfields, and half backs. The further up the field you have, you're actually reducing the number of bodies that are around it and increasing the likelihood that when you break onto it, it's danger time. So,
yeah, and the big thing with that, Séamus, is when the ball is going longer from a puck or from a play, it actually allows you as a forward to read it at a kind of a longer trajectory because it's going to go that distance and it's easy for you to put shape on yourself. When it's actually kind of caught in the air, you're saying, is it actually going to land here? Is it going to land 5 yards in front, or is it going to land 5 yards behind me?
Yeah. And the pace of the ball doesn't carry it through, like, so there's no danger of actually going over the top. But no, like, again, I think Clare will pick themselves up again. I think they'll go through their quarter final, whoever they pick up. If it looks like Wexford, if they get through Laois or whatever, they'll pick themselves up. They'll go again. But it's just it gets wearying when you've got so many chances and you don't take them. It's mentally fatigued. Like you can only be there so many times and not win the thing.
Yeah, and even like McCarthy's free take, and generally, like, he's incredibly accurate.
100%.
Like, for me, that kind of epitomised Clare on the day. I think they're a fabulous team. I think they're a really, really good team. I think they've excellent players, but for some reason they just didn't seem to be there on the day.
Yeah, and I didn't like Kelly. I didn't like Kelly Connor forward. I didn't like it. I thought if you started him, I'd put him out in the middle of the field, and either pushed Darragh Lohan or Cathal Malone. I left David Reedy in corner forward because he's been playing very well for Clare in the round robin. I thought it was kind of hard on him.
And his movement as when you're trying to mark him, his movement is so difficult because he makes like 3 or 4 runs before he actually makes the run for the ball. So like you're really chasing shadows at that stage.
Yeah, I think who was saying it? It was even Taggy Ford. He was saying it during the week, like that you when you mess with a kind of what is a successful unit or a good forward unit, a unit that's working well together. When you start kind of messing with that, it can have consequences. And unfortunately, I think they got that call wrong.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't mind only Tony scored 2 fabulous points in the first half, but I just overall his impact, I think, would have been felt better out the field. But that's just my opinion.
So on the word wrong, will we talk about the sharp puckouts from Kilkenny?
Yeah, unfortunately, Dublin, there isn't the whole pile right. Yeah, from the weekend, from the Leinster final.
Yeah, and do you know what? It was in complete contrast to when they played a couple of weeks beforehand, when they played each other on parallel. I actually thought that Dublin on the day were far superior in terms of their structure and how they were prepared for the game. I just couldn't understand like their sharp puck-out strategy. Kilkenny had 26 puck-outs, 23 of those went short. Now, we can discuss like that you can have all these different kind of structures to play and how you want to puck-outs to go, but unless you're going to pressurize in some fashion, you're leaving yourself open for a bit of a trimming. And I think that's exactly what happened in this instance. Yeah. Like, if we look at this, right, we can see O'Murphy is one of the best strikers of the ball. Hugh Lawler's full back, slightly ahead of the other 2 kind of corner forwards. They have maybe like 10, 15 yards, okay? Like, as an county player, you can't give someone that room, okay? Even if we look at the left-hand side of the field, here's Mikey Carey, right? Again, really good form over the last couple of weeks. Has been fantastic since he's come back into the Kilkenny setup. He has the bones of like 25 yards thrown into here, okay? In space. And if we look at the ball, like, to me, that resembles a game of backs and forwards under 14.
Strokes it down the lane.
He's stroking it down across the ground with no pressure. Again, same here. We see only one Dublin player in the frame. He allows Tommy Welsh nearly to run to the 45 and deliver the ball in. Like, hurling is not like football where you're not going to hit the ball as far. Like, if you get a good strike on the ball, which they done in this instance, so they changed up and said they know that Dublin are going to allow us to go short. So let's get some of our good strikers back in the full back line. Richie Reid, former keeper, one of the best strikers, probably Kilkenny panel. Let's get him back there and strike the ball in. So we can see Richie gets the ball here, plenty of space. He has the bones from the 21 nearly to the 45 to make a decision.
There's no press.
None. And again, it's the point that I said to you a minute ago, Séamus. Forwards now make 2 or 3 runs before they actually make the right run. So that's where they create the gap between the forward and the back. You'll often hear people say, oh, how is he that far away? He's far away because he's after making 3 or 4 runs in advance of that. Okay? And if you can see here, Dublin now are chasing shadows because the balls have been popped to one another.
But they're in those clips, Noel, like they're not close enough to make contact in any of them. And the tackle counts. So tackle counts is done in every dressing room now, right? So and how people define tackles, how teams define tackles, it can change, right? But normally it's some element of contact. And if in an intercounty game, I would expect north of from an average to good team, I'm talking about 70 tackles a game, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see exceptional performances where you get into the 80s, and Limerick have had a few of those. But like Dublin there at the weekend, I would be surprised, right, if their statistician got 40 tackles. I'd be amazed if they were close enough. And then these clips kind of show it. I'd be amazed if they got into that territory. And that to me is no recipe. Like,
but did they allow, like, this is again, like, I could have showed the 23 of these, and like they're all doing the very same thing, and they all result in the very kind of similar outcomes where they have one player or maybe 2 max within the 45. But Kilkenny didn't get sucked to the field because they're saying, well, why didn't they get sucked to it? We're winning here. Like, Dublin played with a sweeper for the whole game. They were 15 points and a half time, and they allowed Kilkenny to dictate the play. Like, look at that space in front of TJ Reid. Of all players in the country, you don't leave that room in front of somebody.
Yeah.
Like, it's allowing the opposition to bring themselves onto you.
But they were trying to tempt Kilkenny into banging it long. And they, to be fair, they did that at times against Wexford in Nolan Park. And I was wondering, I was like, why aren't they working the ball shorter more? Because they can do it. But here, I thought they were super disciplined. I thought they took the right option so many times. Like that ball to TJ, that wasn't a long ball. That was a place ball into space for a forward to run onto. And I think that's what Dublin were trying to do. They were trying to bait Kilkenny into hitting it long. We've got an extra man there to clean it up. Go on, hit it, but Kilkenny didn't fall for the bait. And then you'd ask, if Kilkenny weren't falling for the bait, well, then do you need to change tack? And I didn't see him do that.
Yeah, but the other side of it too is like, if you think about it, if you think of Kilkenny backline, like you have Mikey Carey, you have Richie Reid, you have Mikey Butler, Hugh Lawler, they've all scored in the championship from distance this season, you know, and you're kind of saying to yourself, grand, like if they're not going to like come on to us and wait until we're engaged at 45, like most of those lads, once they get close to the 65, between 65 and 45, they'll score.
Yeah.
So it allows them to kind of pass between, and we'll see it now again in a second. So again, O'Murphy is, I'd say there's probably a burn on the short handle of his hurling now from all the sharp pockets. But the room he's allowed, like Hugh Lawler, give them the ball, and he can take his time. So he gets this ball, and he's actually at a point where he knows, like, you know what? I'm actually under no pressure. He's strolling out here looking for someone to give the ball to. Like, there's actually no intensity in that whatsoever. None. And he can give the ball into whoever's making the move in front of him. And that's really where Dublin fell down. You can have all the bodies in midfield if you want, but if the ball is coming like this, you have Adrian Mullen and he's doing this to you, well, then obviously there's something wrong.
He looked fair sharp. He looked fair sharp to begin, didn't he? Mullen, first game back.
Yeah. And again, like, I kind of felt sorry at times for Donald Burke and others, where they were nearly left in isolation to try and chase shadows. Because when the ball from O'Murphy goes to Hugh Lawler in this instance, Richie Reid is there as an option. And he has time to bounce the ball. And it's nearly the 65 where you can see a Dublin player on that side in that frame. But Hugh Lawler actually says, you know what? They're trying to drag us out the field. I'll just go back to Richie here. There's no panic here. Let's not try and do anything dramatic. And then Richie sees it, there's space here. Now, obviously, they cut out this one. But the intent was there that if that was, it was, say, in a different clip, yes, the Kilkenny fella gets it.
Yeah. Why would you let 23 short puckouts? Like, I know for a fact, obviously, like, you know, they want Kilkenny to do something. They've trained this setup, obviously, where they have the forward sitting off, and basically they're saying, okay, come on, you can hit it, but we don't want you hitting it long first off, but you can hit it long second off, whatever. Why don't they change?
Well, that's the question. Like, why didn't? And maybe the management were trying to change it. Now, I'm not saying like that it's the management's fault solely. Maybe the players didn't communicate that we were meant to push up.
It's wild though, like, because I sometimes, and this is the truth of it, right? Sometimes diagnosing things when you're in the middle of it is very, very hard. So like, you can't actually diagnose what the issue is. All you know is that there's ball raining down on your backs, and you're like, what is the problem? Surely that has to be communicated in from the sideline, and that has to instigate some element of, right, okay, do you know what? Three inside, we're going to push up, we're going to force them long for 5 puckouts. But you didn't even do it for 3. Right. So I just find that the most hard to believe insofar as when you don't have something working, and even when they were down, you know, 10, 12 points, that they didn't go even more, like they didn't try to go adventurous. It was more still.
What's even worse, what I find hard is if this happened at club level, you'd say fine, like they mightn't have like the players, or they mightn't have the time or energy to put into like changing setups and strategies and who goes inside, etc. But these are inter-county players, like playing at an elite level. They're professional, accept like payment and all that stuff. We're well aware of all that, but like, they have to be able to execute more than one plan. Yeah. It has to be more than one. Like, I remember with Derek, like, you could have like 5 or 6 different game plans on. Well, if Seamus Hickey is playing full forward, no, you're marking him. If Garrod Hegarty goes in, Barry Coughlin, you pick him up. Do you know this kind of stuff? If they play with 2 fellas out the field, Barry stays, the other 2 go, Toig sits back, etc. Like, so
what I have seen though, like, especially the younger the team, the harder that is to do, and to have multiple layers of information or multiple layers to your game. That is harder to do because it just doesn't stick, because you're doing it in training, because everything is done through coaching, right? So you're coached the scenario, And then, like, in those scenarios, the younger players are asked, do you get that? And they go, oh yeah, I get it. But it's just funny, you ask Noel Connors, who's 8 or 9 years into his Waterford career, Noel, do you understand what we're doing there? Actually, no, I don't. I don't know what we're doing here. Why are we doing that? And I actually don't know who I'm picking up when I'm supposed to do this. Like, younger lads just don't do that. They don't ask the questions. And I find that with a young team, it's harder to build in what I was calling wrinkles, the different aspects or different ways to play a team. And unfortunately, I think what happened on Sunday was a little bit of the occasion, just kind of lads, what were we talking about in training? What did we say we do? I can't remember. And a little bit of that.
And do you know what? Like, I've been on the side of quite a number of meetings over the years, and like, it's hard. Like, it's hard when you're in that situation, and you prepared yourself, and it's just not like, it can be the occasion. Like, I think Joe Canna picked up on the Sunday game that a number of players for Dublin walked around the parade in Hurleys. Like, for me, you don't take a hurley in your hand. If the morning we wake up, you're literally hurling your hand, ball in the other, and you're walking around thinking like what you're going to do. When you're eating your like pre-match meal, there's a hurley stuck between your legs, and you're playing around with a ball in your hand. I just struggle with that. And even before, we'll say they were called in to do the actual parade, I think that like Dublin had like 3-4, maybe 5 minutes of wandering around themselves, like kind of unstructured in fashion, which kind of to me was like, geez, okay.
Yeah, that can't happen. Like, so like you've got a script, like you know exactly what's happening to the minute. You should know that each segment of your warm-up takes 2.5 minutes, and it takes 2.5 minutes, that you don't have 3 minutes left over for lads to go, maybe I'll take sidelines or maybe I'll hit the ball. You should know exactly what you're doing.
And you know what? It's actually funny because I actually loved it. I actually went back over this. This is how just sad I am. I went back over it. The parade in the Munster final. How good was that?
It was flipping unreal.
They done the national anthem in the parade. Like, how good is that?
But I was also thinking at the same time, I was like, it was very unfair on the parade, on the players. So for anybody who didn't see it, it was basically they started the parade at essentially around the 65 in front of the Canaan stand, and they did a full circuit, like literally a whole full circuit. Normally you'd have players leaving it and halfway through at the far side. So both teams, I think they were obviously instructed to do it because
that was the psyche thing. Like, we're not
I don't think it was a psycho thing. I don't think it was, because I think it was basically they were both instructed to do it, to stay in the parade for Ron Naveen. But it looked so, because both teams beside each other, it was so intense, and the crowd were getting into a frenzy. But to me, it's very hard to ask players. I love the tradition of it, but flip it, like, it can be a bit shorter. Like, that's a big long walk around Thurles, but it was intense. Yeah.
Will we go on to your Offaly?
So I loved. Yeah. So listen. I'm a huge fan of Joe McDonagh Cup, right? I've covered a good few games for him over the last couple of years, and it's a competition for me that I feel the quality of the hurling in it is completely undervalued, right? So like, I think the games, they're competitive. Every game's competitive. Every team can beat every team. That's the level that each of them are at. And we've had different winners every year. Like, it's, well, obviously because of promotion, but like we just have, like, Carlow and Offaly last year, the final was an epic, right? Going into extra time, absolutely brilliant. And this year again, we had a one-score game, we had a level game going into extra minutes at time added on. And it really was. I felt hard for Laois. I think Laois were arguably possibly the better hurling team over the 70 minutes, but Offaly just started both halves really well. And what I focused in on was, what did Offaly do really well at the beginning of both halves, and how they use the ball. And you can see it from their under-20s teams and Leo O'Connor, and how they're trying to coach in Offaly. Let's get comfortable using the ball. Let's get comfortable spraying the ball through the hands. We don't have to mullock it. We don't have to hit it long. This is a puck out, the first puck out for Laois. They wanted to go to where they had the numbers advantage. They had 3 players in midfield, but it was actually cut out in the middle there in the yellow helmet by Dan Burke. So Dan Burke actually picks up the ball. And as soon as those 3 Laois players are caught out in the 65, we've got an overload. Yeah. Now, Dan Burke could have actually taken his score and he'd be within his rights to do it. But then he sees Brian Duggan slip inside. He has the numbers, but look at this for a finish. I love that. That's outside the back of Milan.
You know what? If that was Noel McGrath's pass, everybody would be talking about it.
Everybody raving about it. And so that's Paddy Purcell for Laois, right? And he was class at the weekend. He was exceptional. He scored 5 points from play. But Killian Kiley picks up the ball there. He was loose for most of the game because Laois decided to drop a man. But look how they spray the ball around, right? So they're very comfortable. And then we've got Killian Sampson here, right? He's got options down the line. He looked down the line. He saw diagonal, but he also saw the space at the far side of the field. So he turns back, very, very comfortable, sprays the ball, beautifully delivered ball, one bounce into the hand. And here's Adam Screeney. So he's the cult hero now in Offaly at the moment. And he's been so good under 20s. And he's just, I wonder about the physicality of senior for him, but we're going to see it in the next few years. But at the beginning of the second half, right, Offaly played with Laois played with a sweeper, but at the beginning, at the throw-in, you normally don't have your sweeper in place. This is Oisín Kelly highlighted here.
Super
so Offaly, he's super, and he came on. He made such an impact in the first 10 minutes of the second half. So he's after slipping in behind Paddy Purcell. Now Milani in the full back line, he's like, oh flip, okay, I have to defend this, even though my man is actually just outside in Charlie Mitchell. But he's trying to face Oisín Kelly. Oisín Kelly gives him the slip because he's not set, and he can't catch it again. And that's a super finish, like, because he had caught it twice going into contact with Milani, and he went around him, and then off the hurley, he's finished. So that set up the first 10 minutes of the second half. There was some super scores from Charlie Mitchell, Brian Dignan. Offaly really relied on their spine.
Yeah.
And they've got a really good spine, really, really good spine. So you've got, like, in the full back line, I really like Ben Keneally. He's cornerback. He's such a good man marker. Then you've got Killian Kiley in centre back. He's grown.
He was fantastic.
He's super strong. But like I can't get this notion of we'll drop a player. If you're dropping a player, like Laois pull a player back to have an extra man. But you can't leave the opposition with their choice. Yeah, you can't leave the opposition with their choice of free men. You can't. Because Killian Kiley was the worst possible man. He scored 2 points in the first 10 minutes of the game from distance. And he just did damage all around the field. And for me, Offaly relied on him. The Brian Dignan has been superb throughout the round robin for Joe McDonagh Cup. And like, he's grown into it last year. Last year he was still kind of a bit young. And he was still playing well, but he's grown more as a leader. And then obviously you've got Mitchell in full forward, and then Screeney kind of doing, obviously a lot of good stuff around him. But and they've got good players on the side.
They're going to like get a drip full of protein and literally put it into Screeney for the next 6 months to like bulk him up by about like 10 kilos.
Yeah.
So that's a rumor start. I'm joking, by the way, for anyone.
Pure protein. But no, but on a serious note, they've got the skill level is there to see, right? How they're able to use the ball. Oisín Kelly able to get around Milani, ball in the hurley, finish off the hurley. So the skill level to me is there for Offaly. Yeah. It is. I think it is. They will have to get physically stronger because they're such a young group of players. They will have, like, Killian Kiley for me is probably one of the few guys who would stand up physically to a Wexford or to a Clare or even to a Limerick. So it'll be interesting to see going forward. And Laois, for me, they were full value for their place in the final. But I just feel like they had a couple of late wides that killed them. You said it earlier as we were talking. So you had Ross King come on. Their subs bench is their
sub bench is incredible. Ross King brought on Pinky Maher, they brought on Willie Dunphy, like savage players. And even the likes of Oisín Kelly coming on for Offaly, like, I think he's done 2 ACLs in the last 2 years or a couple of years. Like, to see those lads coming on the pitch, like, gee, they're very impressive.
And Laois had their chances, right? So they had their chances in the second half, particularly for goals when the game was tight. So a long delivery in here, and like, looks to strength in here, full forward for Laois. He passed off to Purcell. Purcell had 4 points from play at that stage. I was banking on him finishing that. And they were Offaly were very lucky to get away with it. But here you have Pinky Maher, right? He gets on the ball here, slips his man. But we've got David Dooley, I thought was played very well all game, right? He slips Killian Sampson, gets past Killian Kiley, and he looks like he's through there. But a combination of just the effort of Sampson and Kiley to get back for that hook, that was a goal for me, right?
Yeah. And that's the difference, though. That is the difference between Liam McCarthy. That's a slip ball across.
The time you have to strike, where you actually get, you normally don't get to recover from being slipped, like, you don't get to do it. But the effort from Kiley and from Sampson for me was massive, because that was a 1 point game, and instead of conceding a goal, they actually conceded 65, and then it was level going into the additional minutes, and Offaly hits 2 massive scores to go, and then got a free to finish out the game. But that to me was massive intervention. Now for Laois, I think they can take a lot more out of that, because I think they were very nervous in the first half.
I thought Laois were the best team in the first half.
I thought so, yeah. But it just when you're making mistakes and you're hitting wides, there's more to improve. And I think that there is more to improve going into next week against Wexford. They have nothing to lose against Wexford.
Yeah.
And for me, now Offaly have the harder job. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in Tullamore, because I was in Tullamore last year for Offaly tip. And that did not go well. That went very, very bad.
But do you know what, though? Like, the one thing I would say about Joe McDonagh, like, teams that have come up, like, in the past would have had a difficult couple of games in Championship. But we saw with Carlow, like, that Carlow, like, they had really good results.
Antrim are sticking. They're not going anywhere.
Like, Carlow's result against Kilkenny in Carlow, albeit Kilkenny the man down, like, was very impressive. Like, so the gap is definitely, like, narrowing. So I think teams are taking a lot of impetus from that, like that when we go up, we're not there just to mess around, but we're actually there to compete and
there's also, like, in fairness, there's good work been done underage in both these counties, right? So in both Laois and Offaly. So, like, both of them are very young teams. And, like, we were talking about the experience of the Laois bench, but that means that they did a lot of young lads. So they did an 18-year-old in wing back. Like, that to me that's massive. Like, to be 18 and playing in a national final, senior, like, it's I think for me there's bright futures ahead. A lot of the hard parts of this is sustaining the momentum, right. Offaly, I don't think will have that same issue, because they've got huge resources in terms of effort, manpower. You know, they really are sticking to the plan that they laid out a couple of years ago, and it's yielding fruit. So you know, I would love to see them give it to Cork, but they're going to have to bring something different.
And Cork haven't played in a while now as well. Like, Cork should be
they're fresh. They're fresh, but how do they stop that Cork pace? That's what I'm wondering about.
Yeah, and even, do you know what? I think the Laois Wexford match will be a lot closer than we might expect it to be. The only thing I hope that doesn't necessarily have any impact on their performance, because they put in a really good performance for 70+ minutes. I just hope that they're fresh and ready to go, because there's some great players. Like, they really Laois have some fabulous players. Like, Pinky Maher, like, has been a Trojan for that team over the last decade. Like, you know, and even Willie Maher. Like, Willie Maher went to college with Willie Maher, like, and he has some of the best wrist work I have ever seen. Lovely strike for ball, and they're only fellas coming off the bench. So I hope that, like, they can use that experience and test Wexford, like, because, like, as I said to our producer, who wasn't overly impressed, like, Laois bet Dublin a couple of years ago. Remember, Eddie Brennan was manager. Like, there's always kind of a shock around this time of the year when it comes to the Hurling Championship. So if there's going to be a shock, I don't necessarily think it'll be on the Cork Offaly side, but there could be one in the Offaly Wexford side. Yeah, because we haven't been as consistent over the last, you know, couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we saw what happened when they went up to Antrim, thinking that all they do was go up to Belfast and take the points. But for me, I think we should watch. I think we should watch the preliminary quarterfinals. I think we see the progress of Offaly. See what I would say. You know, the golden week that they had last week. I think they've got nothing to lose. Like, they should be able to cut loose and measure themselves. But for me, I'd love to see more of the Joe McDonagh covered. Right, I really do. I think that whether it's whoever does it, whether it's ourselves and Gaago or RT, I think we have to cover it, because I think we're covering Talton, and I'm glad we are, right, because every football team deserves the opportunity to have their game seen. But I think we have to do it for the Joe McDonagh, because, and it's not it's the standard of the product. Like, it's and
it's not tokenism by any stretch of imagination. Yeah, it's not tokenism. Like, it's not the fact you're saying, like.
And it's enjoyable hurling, and it's entertaining games. So I think we should be following it. But sure, that's my answer.
So you're saying we need to watch Cork versus Offaly this weekend, because we get to see Séamus Hickey again on television. That's what you're saying.
What I'm saying is
Richie, and I'll go on full calm, because I have a face for radio, basically.
Well, we might leave you out of camera shot, and we just have you audio, and then Richie can do what he's doing in his Croke Park audio tours, and talk us through. He's doing a great job of that too, by the way. But yeah, no, I'm loving it, because the more hurling games that we cover, I think.
You're only saying that because you want to get out of the house for the full day, like when you find.
You want to.
Okay, do you know what? We got to leave it there, because we're way over time today. I'll blame you for that one, Seamus. And let's do this, right? On Saturday's game, we can't wear green.
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
Okay, so Seamus, thanks as usual. 7 weeks down, hard to believe.